buckling of the structure during any arm activity. So here we are, our feet are fixed. We're reaching this way, we're reaching that way. We're using a Viper and we're doing a little kayaking kind of motion with it. The weight's going one side to the other. The legs are not going to buckle due to the fact that the line goes from the bottom of the feet all the way up the side, creates a basket effect for your trunk, and it's all about the stability of it. So you're not crumpling inward, you're not going out with your lower body. You guys know that in sport, you have to have a strong lower body to really be successful. A lot of that has to do with the lateral line. As far as the movement function, creates lateral bend. So think of all the different ways that we can bend sideways. You've got your trunk, there's lateral flexion of the trunk. You've got your abduction of your hip. So that's going lateral. Eversion of the foot. Your foot's flattening out. There's your eversion. So all of that is in the frontal plane. And so there's your movements for the lateral line. It also acts as an adjustable brake for lateral and rotational trunk movement. So you think of your trunk going one way. If you rotate in one direction or lean in one direction, you're lengthening the opposite side. So there's your brake. There's your deceleration brake. Then you come back to the center. Same thing with rotation. When you use the muscles of your trunk to rotate, one side will work on the rotation, the other side will act as the brake to stop rotation. Right, so obviously my experience with skaters, when they rotate, they're rotating to their left. If they're a right-handed skater, they're landing on their right leg when they land. And because they're always going in that direction, something on this side has to stop their rotation. And so that's where that comes into play, your lateral line. So there's our movement and our posture. So starting with the line, number one, first metatarsal tendon of the blank muscle. So what has its insertion at the first metatarsal? We covered that with the superficial backline. Okay, so your peroneus longus. So the peroneus longus muscle has an insertion at the first metatarsal. So the tendon arises from that. It does go up to your fibula. So the origin of that is the fibula. Okay, so then it picks up the blank muscle on the lateral side of the foot from the fifth metatarsal. So the insertion at the fifth metatarsal, which is the base of your little toe, the base of your pinky toe is the fifth. That is your peroneus brevis. So both of those muscles put together, they make up your peroneal complex. And number 3 says, both travel up the fibula, so the metatarsal complex is linked with the fibula. Okay, so we've got base of the big toe. That's where our peroneus longus inserts. Then we've got the base of the little toe. There's your peroneus brevis. Both travel to the lateral part of the foot, and then they wrap behind the lateral malleolus, wrap behind it, and start to travel right up the back of your leg, right on your fibula. But the one thing you should take from that is just that the muscles that are attached to your metatarsals, they go all the way up your fibula. So wherever that bone is and the muscles on that bone, it's controlling a lot of your foot.
Do they separate into two, or is it one wide?
Which, the peroneals?
Both under the foot. Do they separate here and go to each side?
Well, think about how they start. If they start from the base of your big toe and the base of your little toe.
Right.
What happens is,
they come over to
right off the bat, the peroneus longus right away starts to wrap this direction.
So it goes by it.
So it starts, it's not down here, but it's here, and it starts to wrap around the lateral part of the foot.
Okay.
And the peroneus brevis starts right there, so it just kind of attaches right on the lateral part of your foot, and then continues up behind your bone, the malleolus bone right here. So it is more so on the front part of the foot as it goes lateral on the outside of the foot. Okay, so they travel up the fibula. Then we continue. The anterior ligament of the head of the fibula hits the lateral tibial condyle. So you've got the anterior ligament of the fibula attaching to the tibia right at the condyle. So that's as we move on, that's where we go. Number 5. The IT band from the lateral tibial condyle widens as it travels up the greater trochanter. So that's number 5. So IT band, a lot of people will call it the ITT, the iliotibial tract. It's kind of like a sling wrapped around the greater trochanter. So the outer part of your hip, it just kind of covers that entire bone. As it gets wider, it attaches, number 6, to the superior fibers of the gluteus maximus. So the upper fibers of the butt are the ones that attach to the IT band. It's gluteus maximus. The superior fibers of the gluteus maximus, as well as the tensor fasciolatum, and over the inferior fibers of the gluteus, that's medius. So the gluteus medius is actually above the greater trochanter. It's above it. It's above where the IT band is. The gluteus medius actually kind of just blends into the IT band at the very top, but it's the bottom fibers go underneath where the IT band is. So the gluteus medius actually attaches under the IT band, kind of comes over it, and it's under. Is there a picture of that? I guess on the front page, on the first page, where you see gluteus medius, you see the IT iliotibial tract come up. I don't know if you can really see, but it does go under that tract.
So where they make it's at the top.
It's at the top. Okay, so this complex is used. So all of these muscles put together. Your TFL, your gluteus maximus, your gluteus medius. So it's all put together. So every time that you take a step, you're putting weight on this leg. All you're doing is you're preventing your upper body from rotating in the direction of the unweighted side. That's really what you're doing. So every time you take a step, these muscles prevent this part of your upper body from falling in this direction. That's what it does. So you're preventing all of that from happening. That's what those muscles do. So you're taking a step. This shoulder actually comes forward. You're using all of these muscles to do that motion. Then you take another step. Same thing. You rotate this direction. So that entire complex, okay, where the IT band joins all these muscles, that's the main focus of that area. Okay. And it says under that, these abductors of the hip are used less for abduction, more for preventing adduction. Anytime that you're pushing your butt out, if you're reaching in one direction, you're stretching all of those muscles. And then you use them by coming back to the center. And that's really what they're used for. These muscles are not designed to, hey, let's work them. Hey, let's lie on our side and start raising our leg up. What they're really used for in function is you take a step, you're preventing your butt from going that way, which makes your upper body fall this way. That's really what they're used for in function. They're not designed for you to lie on your side and start to do this kind of stuff. Who isolates these stabilizers? They started doing that. Think of jazzercise, think of classes in the 80s that started out where women are like, I've got too much fat here, so I better start working that area. I feel a burn. I feel the burn there. So then everybody started doing leg raises. We know that it really doesn't do anything. So these muscles are really, they're stabilizing the hip, just like your rotator cuff stabilizes your shoulders. It's the same purpose. Just like, if you want to train your rotator cuff, take a kettlebell and press a kettlebell. As you press the kettlebell, you're training all the bigger muscles for moving it, but you're also training the rotator cuff, which stabilizes the entire joint as you go through the motion. So it's the same thing with your hip. Every time you take that step, you're stabilizing the hip with all those muscles that wrap around the greater trochanter. That's the real purpose of those muscles. You know, it's not for us to perform abduction. It's for us to prevent adduction. That's the real purpose.
But they do perform abduction.
They do.
Well.
They do. If you need to get your leg out,
Step out.
you know, there's your gluteus medius, there's your upper fibers of your gluteus maximus. They do contribute to the same motion. Your TFL is a little bit more abduction, kind of in a diagonal fashion. You know, so if you internally rotate your leg and bring your leg more abduction-ish to the front, that's going to be a lot more TFL, which will be on the front of the hip. But gluteus medius is going to just be lateral abduction and single leg stability. Is a lot of the gluteus medius holding it in the socket. Just like your rotator cuff, as soon as you pick up an object that weighs something and you're walking around holding it, what's preventing your arm from just popping out of the socket? It's your rotator cuff just wraps around the glenohumeral joint. It just wraps everything and it just tightens the whole thing. So all of a sudden, just holding something in your hand is going to train your rotator cuff. Just holding it. Now, if we start shrugging, you know, that's going to be your upper traps taking over. But even if we're not shrugging, we're just letting our arm drop. Holding anything that weighs whatever is going to start. That rotator cuff is going to take over and just start wrapping around everything and squeezing.
That's why there's pendulums.
That's right. So you'll never see me, you know, okay, let's train the rotator cuff. You know, let's lie on our side. Let's lie on our side and start training the rotator cuff. You don't train a stabilizer. There's no purpose to training a stabilizer. There's you know, when it comes to function, I mean, I'm going to train my rotator cuff just for holding something, pressing something. I'll train the muscles of my hip just by taking steps, just by holding positions with my feet. Single leg positions, train that. So there's really no purpose to taking a stabilizer and working it. That's exactly what Gray Cook would say. Gray Cook says the same. You see the skull, the front muscle is your sternocleidomastoid, and the blank takes over at the posterior side, at the lower cervical spine and upper thoracic spine. That would be your splenius capitis. So that picture shows the splenius capitis coming from the rear and your sternocleidomastoid coming from the front. And that's the continuation of the lateral line. Because you guys, you know that you have those on both sides of your body. So the line goes up one side, the line goes up the other side, and they both finish right at the back of your skull. That's where your line finishes. Now, number 10 also says forward head posture. So we know that you've got clients that have their head, their head is sticking out, forward head carriage. So what is that from? And so what the splenius capitis does, when it's attached to the upper portion of your T-spine and the lower portion of your cervical spine, that is a solid base. So the splenius capitis has a really nice solid base as it travels up to the back of your head, to the back of your skull. So if that muscle is used well, that is somebody who doesn't have forward head posture. Now, if that muscle is detrained, okay, what happens is the levator scapulae muscle takes over. Who knows where the levator scapulae muscle, what is it, where is it based? What is the base of it? Where does it begin? What do you think? You're smiling. What do you think?
He gets belly button. I don't know.
Belly button? How's it wrong? Brett knows. Brett, so what's the start? You know, so it's the scapula. So it's actually the upper border, the medial upper border of your scapula. That is where the levator scapulae begins.